It's Paul from studyboynz. I'm here at Ewelme Cottage. We're going to go and take a look in there, so let's go see what we can find.
Well, you're standing in Ewelme Cottage, which is a little house in Parnell, one of the very first, and this house was built from kauri timber, and it was built in the early 1860s for a family, an Anglican clergyman with the wonderful name of Vicesimus Lush and his wife Blanche, and they had, at the time they arrived in New Zealand, 4 children, but they went on to have 9 altogether. And Vicesimus was the minister at All Saints Church in Howick, but they had children who were secondary school age, and in Auckland there were very few secondary schools, none for girls, and for their boys the option was what was known as the Cathedral Grammar School in Parnell. There's a lovely photograph of that school on the wall over here if you'd like to have a look at it. It sounds really posh, Cathedral Grammar School. Here it is here, one little room.
Oh, very small.
Very small. And across the road from it was a wonderful building that's still there today, known as Kinder House. Reverend Kinder was one of the headmasters of Cathedral Grammar. And
so this one just up the road, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So it's still there today. And this wonderful photograph here shows you a little bit of the suburb. So the Lushes arrived in Aotearoa pretty much 10 years after the signing of Treaty of Waitangi, and they came to Tamaki Makaurau, to Auckland. And at that time, Pākehā settlement here wasn't entirely safe and secure. It relied very much on the patronage of Tainui chiefs in particular to protect this settlement from the great fear of attack from Māori from Muri Whenua. So the concerns being that the seat of government for Pākehā society had moved from the Bay of Islands here to Auckland. So if you've ever been to Government House in the university grounds, that's part of that settlement there.
Where the High Court now, that's where the Parliament was, wasn't it?
I'm not quite sure, but Government House is across the road from the High Court, and that building still exists today as part of Auckland University, and you can look at the outside of it at least, and when you go to university you may well these days have lectures or seminars in that building. So, as I say, at the time the Lushes arrived, settlement, the safety of Pākehā settlement was a little unsure. Howick itself was a separate outlying settlement, and it was supposedly protected by the fencible settlers. So a group of retired soldiers from Great Britain, many of them had done 25 or 30 years of service, came with their families to New Zealand on the promise of a little bit of house and a little bit of land, and what they had to do was in return provide protection. They had to be prepared to take up arms and defend the Pākehā settlement should the need arise. It's a
nice garden.
It is gorgeous, isn't it? So the section nowadays actually goes down the hill, and you may not realise it, but Parnell has a lot of little gullies or valleys and streams, and so there's one down the bottom there. So this site goes down. At one time the family owned land around this house. They had a productive garden. It looks as if they've had a cow. There is a replica well on the south side of the house. That's how people got their water, from a well. So that well actually doesn't work. As I say, it's a replica. The original was just to the west and the next door neighbours, but of course there's a house there now, so you can't do that. So this garden, believe it or not, that lawn was once flat. When the Lushes first built this house, or had it built for them, they took a very active part in the day-to-day layout of the house, the building, the finishing of it. They were very interested in it, and also in the gardens. And one of the things that they did was create a croquet lawn. So croquet is a lawn, a ball and mallet game that people play. So over there under the tree, it's a little bit hard to see because part of the Pahutakawa came down a couple of weeks ago. There's an old roller. So this lawn here was all levelled. Over the decades, it's slowly starting to slope downhill again.
So that's where we are now. It's been developed since then.
Now, we haven't got the doors open, but I'll just show you a few things.
Okay.
So you might notice that when you stand side on, you can see that there are some marks on these boards. So as I said, this is original kauri. So when the timber was milled and turned into these boards, the builder, a man by the name of William Hunter, had a mechanical saw, and he was getting used to using it. So you can see that those are the marks.
So an interesting little part of the history of the place there. We'll do some more and have a look around ourselves. So this is a very old house, obviously, as you've been hearing.
Two bits of polystyrene in this cabinet. That the Lushes bought with them and is meant to be very old, and it is actually a baby's toy, I suppose. The red bit on the end, this is another product that you can't deal with any longer, that's red coral. And it has a whistle at one end and bells, so it's designed for teething, that's the coral bit, and the other bit of course is just for the amusement of the child. You'll see a couple of children's shoes there. But what you can see in the background, small little miniature, what look like cups and saucers and household appliances, and little chairs and furniture. Dolls' houses, miniature houses, or things like that. That's what they are. You absolutely can go up those stairs. You're the perfect size, your feet are, for those stairs. Like that's where the children used to sleep up there. I'm sure you'll find out where. That's quite important. But there are some things in here, and they're a little bit hard to see. So this family had quite an association with the Melanesian mission.
Okay.
So you probably know of the mission house down in Mission Bay?
Yes, I've been there, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for a short period of time, the idea was, it was an Anglican Church thing, was that men from Melanesia would come to Mission House in Mission Bay, and they would train to become teachers and church workers. It didn't work well because the winter and their health did not cope with really cold New Zealand winters. So a short time later, that practice was stopped, and instead Anglicans from New Zealand went out to what nowadays is Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, PNG, and Fiji too. Okay. So it was reversed, but for a time that Melanesian mission was funded in part by the efforts of people who were generous enough to give the money. So in this household, a lot of the women did what they called fancy work or needlework that was sold in order to raise funds for the mission. So at the top here you'll see a few examples of things that were gifted to the family as tokens of generosity. So you might recognise some of those designs as designs that we'd nowadays associate with Pacific nations. Only looked like this once Blanche came back to live here as a widow in the early 1880s. So she had a wall taken out and this one big grand room made. The wallpaper here is from a famous British designer by the name of William Morris, and the design is called Sunflowers. And at the time Blanche purchased it and had it imported to New Zealand, it had only been registered for a few years, the design I mean.
Okay.
So it tells you that she was up with what was considered fashion at the time. Lace making which used bobbins. So in fact you'll find a group of people, I think mostly based in Ellerslie, that can do those things still.
Okay.
So that little screen over there, see that funny screen on the pole?
Yes.
That is stitched with silk thread. So it's not painted, it's actually stitched again. And incidentally, do you have any idea what that the purpose of that screen was?
Is it so when they're making it, is it?
No, it's actually designed to be a face protector for when you are sitting close to the fire, so you don't get too much heat on your face.
Okay.
And it preserves your complexion. So face protectors were something that women would have made in terms of stitching, and they would have been the people who used it. So it's designed to keep a woman's complexion smooth and clear.
So is this someone that...
Yes, this is.
This is...
So I always have to have a look at it. So this is the great-grandmother of Blanche Lush, Mrs. Lush.
Yeah.
So she is... I really like that portrait. I think that's magnificent. And this is... She was the mother of this man here, and this is the one who was involved with the editing of Shakespeare's second folio and the owner of Shakespeare's third folio. So I'm not very much of a Shakespearean scholar, but the collection, the folio of some of Shakespeare's work called the third folio is the rarest and most unusual. This man, or through this man, Blanche Lush, came to inherit a copy of that, and that is in the Auckland City Library collections, manuscript collections. So all of this little section here has works by Shakespeare, and you probably noticed that.
Now, apparently, this lady's eyes follow you wherever you are. It's not coming up that great on video, but they do.
So people lived quite self-sufficient lives when it came to what they ate and what they drank. So this is the kitchen, and although it looks really old, this kitchen was part of the rebuild that Blanche undertook when she came here as a widow. So this room was a total addition.
Yeah.
So you'll see over in the far corner a kind of stove. So this again comes from before the time of electricity. People still have stoves like this because they're solid fuel stoves. So this is called a coal range, and this one has actually been made in New Zealand. So you'll see it's got a maker's mark here, H.H. Smith from Auckland.
Yeah.
And so this was how the house would be heated, although that wasn't an advantage in the summer. That was a real problem. It's also how water can be heated, so that's why there's a tap over here, and so water would go into that. It's basically a tank, and you could get hot water that way. This is an oven. This is where you put the coal or the timber.
Yeah.
So you could cook on it, you could heat your water, heat your house, but you might also notice these amazing little things here.
What, the irons?
That's exactly right. So these are irons. So remember, this is before electricity. But people, women, ironed clothes, they ironed sheets, all sorts of things. So if you just look over here, you'll see an example of an apron. So this is something that you'd wear. You'd have a clean apron probably pretty much every day. But mostly people would wear the same clothes 6 days of the week. But you'd change maybe your collars and cuffs, and you'd change your apron. So that's what that is doing here. But when it came to the irons, perhaps up here is the easiest way of seeing it. This is a tiny little miniature one. It's not a doll's one or a toy one. That one is a small iron for ironing small and delicate things like ruffles and collars and cuffs and children's clothing. And that wooden handle with a knob on it is detachable. So you would pull the little knob up and it would unclip the wooden handle. So you'd have one wooden handle but several small irons or several big irons. And what you do is, there's something that looks a bit like a skateboard around the corner by the mangle, which is part of the washing clothes process as well. This is the ironing board. So that would be carried to the kitchen table. You'd put cloths over it to protect the wood, and you would put your garment on it and iron away. And if you'd like to feel what one of the heaviest, so this is the sort that we use for ironing sheets, because believe it or not,
Oh, that is heavy.
that is really heavy, isn't it? I know. So that's a big scale. So if you're...
It'd be a workout.
It would be a workout. And you'd do your ironing the day after you did your washing. And people often did things to a regular pattern. So Monday was washing days in many people's households. So the first workout that you would get would be working the copper to heat the water and plunge your clothes and your grated soap in it, and then you would get to work out on one of these things. So this is a mangle, and it would, or a wringer, it would actually be outside. This isn't the right place for it. So the idea is that these rollers, which you can increase and decrease the tension by turning that screw there, you'd feed your wet clothes through there, turn the handle, which would draw them through, squeezing the water out, rather than going like that.
Yeah.
It'll just take too long. So that was Monday's effort. Tuesday's effort was supposedly the ironing, provided you got the clothes dry. You had several irons heating, and you would iron away at your table until your iron got too cool to be effective. Then you'd take it back, put it back onto the stove so it could heat up, detach the wooden handle, put your wooden handle on your next new hot iron, and then carry on. A lot of effort, isn't it? So when it came to other tasks, people made a lot of their own food, like bread from scratch, butter from scratch. In this household, they made beer as well.
Oh, cool.
Which is really good. It's such a contemporary thing to do. So you'd make butter, you'd make cheese, you'd make beer. You'd also often make medicines for the family. So over here, you'll see some jars. They don't have real minerals and tinctures in them nowadays, though they did in those days. So, you know, at the very back you can see one that says that it is a sulfate of soda. So, for example, if you were making medicine for your family, it depended on what was wrong. So for common ailments like stomach aches and headaches, what you would do is work to a recipe. And often it was recipes in books up there. So Mrs. Beaton's was probably the most famous one. So Mrs. Beaton's English Woman's Cookery Book, this is a small version of it, this is a much bigger one. So this book and many other, if you like, household or cookbooks would have a section on recipes for how to make a tincture for headaches, if you were an adult-sized person or if you were a child. So you'd know how much of the soda, whether you'd put oil with it or whether you'd put water with it, and you'd mix that up and you'd administer it. So you might have a number of those sort of, I guess, they're the precursor or the base materials that you use to make your medicines with. Now this is really quite interesting, because I presume that this was one of the things that came with the Lushes when they arrived as on board the migrant ship. So as cabin passengers, people who paid extra money to have a private cabin to be above decks, they could bring extra supplies for themselves as well. So this insurance egg box, so if I lift this up very carefully and you look underneath, you'll see how eggs could be carried to survive.
So now we're upstairs in the children's bedrooms. Very cool. Really old style chest. Look out the window there. It's hard to imagine people living back then in this type of house. I mean, very low parts. Oh, there, see the construction of the house, how it was made. The walls being broken away there. You can actually get in and see, oh, that's been wallpapered in there. It's like a storage area. So thanks for watching. Thanks to Heritage New Zealand. Thanks to the staff here for letting me have a look around. So support them, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and hit that bell notification to get notified of upcoming videos.